to The Drummer and the Great Mountain, a podcast where we share effective tips and practices for working with adults ADD, ADHD in a natural, effective way without the use of medications. Each episode, join me, your host, Batman Saram, along with the author of The Drummer and the Great Mountain, Michael Joseph Ferguson. Join Michael and myself in an interactive discussion of sharing our stories as we journey together in transforming what can be the gift of being what we call hunter types. This podcast is intended to be your audio companion to the book written by Michael, who joins me each episode where we both will strive to foster dialogue, give you our personal insights, and share both of our experiences on this similar path that we are all on. Our intention and hope is that along with the book, this podcast gives you an additional perspective as you listen to us delve deeper into each chapter of the book to give you even more tools to go along with what it is that you are reading. Visit us at drummerandthegreatmountain.com to purchase the book and look for more tools, tips, and updates, as well as giving us feedback on this podcast. Join our growing global community of creative types, entrepreneurs, and out-of-the-box thinkers on our shared journey. Welcome to The Drummer and the Great Mountain podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Michael Joseph Ferguson. Today's topic is mastering mundane, overwhelming, and non-stimulating tasks. These are the bane of our hunter type's existence on the planet. These are the things that most throw us off. This is where procrastination and overwhelm come from, low self-esteem. So many pieces wrapped up in this theme today. And we've covered this a bit in other episodes, but it really deserves its own episode. So we'll be discussing why these kinds of tasks are so difficult for us and what are some key strategies to really get good at accomplishing them. So before we get started, I have a few announcements to make. First off, the book, Drummer and the Great Mountain, a guidebook to transforming adult ADD, ADHD, will be on sale at 15% off on our website through July 4th. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while and haven't picked up the book, this is a really good opportunity. Just visit drummerandthegreatmountain.com and click on the purchase button. It'll already be set on sale. You don't have to enter a coupon code. So check that out. Also, in case you didn't get the email, we have just released a free ebook called ADHD Time Management. So hopefully you got the email if you're on the email list, but if you haven't, here's the deal. I took the time management chapter of Drummer and the Great Mountain, and I did some rewriting and added some sections to it. So what I decided to do is just let it out as a free ebook to stand on its own. And we put it out on Amazon and iBooks and on Kobo, a few other places. So if you haven't grabbed it, please do so. It is, especially if you've bought the book before and you've read the book, go back, check this out, download it. You can get it on whatever reading device you'd like, from your phone to a Kindle device to Barnes & Noble, Nook. You can get it on there as well. So go check that out. What I wanted to do is just revisit that theme of time management, take in some things that I've learned the last few years from coaching clients as far as what has worked for them and what hasn't, throwing out some different things, testing out some new strategies, as well as from the workshop. So I've been able to distill down a few more pieces that I felt were really essential for time management. And specifically, I think one of the most important sections I added was a 5-step daily planning process using mind mapping. That has really become something that I've watched be really useful for both my clients and for workshop participants. So definitely check that out. It's available on Amazon. Check the link in this episode description, or just go to Amazon and write ADHD Time Management. Same with iBooks and Kobo. And I'll see if I can release it to a few other ebook sites over the next few months. So check it out. For those of you who did download it, thank you so much. We actually ended up being #1 on Amazon free ebooks for, it was 90-minute self-help short reads. So we beat out The Art of War, which I thought was really interesting. That's like, I don't know, like 1,000-year-old book. And now we beat them out. I felt really good about that, even though it was a free ebook. You guys really dove on it, and I appreciate that. We're also #1 for free ebooks on ADHD on Amazon, and I think we're currently at #4 for time management in business. So, and that's a lot thanks to you guys diving in there, downloading the book. Thanks so much for writing the reviews. If you like the book, if you've enjoyed it, please consider writing a review. It helps other people tune into the book and, rate it, do what you need to do if you're enjoying the book. Same with The Drummer in the Great Mountain. We just put that onto Kindle and Amazon, just a couple months ago. So if you've liked the book and you've sent me a review, so many of you have, consider just hopping over, just copy and pasting it from your email that you sent me. And post it into, especially The Drummer in the Great Mountain. That would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that because it's been available on the website for so many years, but just releasing it out into the Amazon wild. So anyway, thanks all so much for downloading it and giving me some really good feedback on it. I really hope that's helpful to you. So check that one out. And also, we just wrapped up our latest Alive online workshop. So it's really, I just want to give a shout out to all of you who have been in the workshop. Thanks so much for your participation and your support and your intelligence and your passion. We had people from all over the world, and a few people were up at like 3 a.m. to do the live session. So that was serious dedication, and I really want to celebrate that. And it was just such a great group, and it was such a reminder of what a diverse and highly talented, skilled group of people. For those people who are listening to the podcast specifically, you guys are amazing. It's been such a joy to do this work and work with you in the workshops, do the one-on-one coaching with you from all walks of life. It's such a diverse group, but the intellect specifically, and I think just the raw talent of the people that tend to gravitate, who I think are hunter types, but also tend to gravitate to this particular podcast, I'm just blown away. So thank you all so much. It was such an honor to work with you. To add to that, we are considering, this has been on our list for a while, we're considering putting together a support group that would be probably like a weekly check-in group. I want to give people an alternative to the one-on-one coaching because right now we're still running a wait list. And I feel like it's a kind of support that many of you could really use as far as just doing like a weekly check-in on what's been working, what's your wins, what's your challenges, what are the goals that you're aiming for this week. Just having a group to process that through with instead of just doing the one-on-one work, which for many people that's like the quintessential, because you're getting like really focused one-on-one support. But there's something really valuable in doing group support, and you get community in a way that I think hunter types often don't get because we're around people that may not understand us. And so we feel, a lot of self-judgment. And what I witnessed even from this last workshop, when people get together who share the same challenges, but also are very creative and very passionate, then things happen. There's sort of an inner rewiring that starts to occur when you feel like you're not alone and you've got the support you need. So we're considering pulling together a support group. What I'd love to hear from you is, what would you like in a weekly check-in support group? So we do it online. We do we'd probably do Zoom like we do with the Zoom conferencing like we do with the workshop. So if you have some insights of things that you'd like to get support on a weekly basis in a group setting, reach out. Email me at info@drummerinthegreatmountain.com. And I will keep you posted. I'm not quite sure when this is going to go live yet. We might split it up into 2-month sections. We've got a few ideas on the table. I've led a number of groups before, so I'm just putting it out to the group mind, and let me know what your thoughts are on that. And also, added to that, what are good times for you during the week? I would love to hear that. What would be a good time for you to feel like this would be a good, say, I'm guessing we're going to go 1 to 1.5 hour sessions, and we'll definitely record those so you can have access to them later if you're in the group. So love to hear your thoughts on that. Okay, on to today's topic, mastering mundane, overwhelming, and non-stimulating tasks. So these are the ones that we push out, we feel overwhelmed by. They're the things that we just procrastinate, and then we feel a lot of self-judgment about because we don't get them done. If your spouse may be frustrated with you because they're like, can't you just get this done? And to even a larger extent, these are things that could be really having a dramatic impact on your finances. They could be just especially self-esteem. I think that's where a lot of it lands, is gives your inner critic a lot of fuel for self-judgment. And so what tends to happen is that the task comes up, you have to get it done. And instead of doing that, you get caught by the brighter, more stimulating task, or just going into sort of social media and just completely distracting yourself from the task at hand, because either you can't stay focused on it, or it's overwhelming, and so you just push it out. And so, but you think about it all the time. You're like, okay, I know I have to get that done. I know I have to get that done. So it's a vicious cycle, and it could be a big mound of suffering for a lot of us hunter types. And we can even do things like we'll just clean the house or do something that's more defined than the task at hand. So we're going to talk a lot about what constitutes this kind of task. What does that look like? And then also, what are some strategies to work on that are going to make these more manageable? So to start off with, we need to talk about the biochemical component of why these kinds of tasks are challenging. So as a reminder, refresher, if you're new to this podcast, you may not have heard me say this, but everyone else has. So I'll just briefly go through it. With people who are wired as hunter types / ADHD, ADD, one of the key brain chemical components of this is we have less dopamine receptors. And dopamine is the brain chemical that affects specifically, as far as we're concerned, with focus and motivation. So if a task isn't exciting, stimulating in some way, we literally don't have the chemical motivation to stay with it. So that's on the non-stimulating mundane end of it. There's also the overwhelm part of it, which is that we feel there's too many pieces to the puzzle, or it's not defined enough that we feel we don't know where to start. And that's like another aspect of these kinds of tasks. They're similar in some ways and different in other ways. And we'll break those out in a little bit here. So again, because it's a brain chemical component, it's often then that the result of that is it leads to low self-esteem, even depression, because your sense of self-esteem often is connected to accomplishment and being able to, move through the world and feel a sense that you are accomplished. You can do the things that you set yourself out to do. When you're not able to do that over a period of time, then that can turn inward into self-judgment, low self-esteem, and depression. So we have these tasks, they're on our list. We know we need to get them done. We're constantly thinking about them. We have a high level of anxiety because we're not doing them, but we just can't get ourselves to do them. And so one note, as we talk about the hunter type model, one of the key aspects to supporting your overall ability to handle these kinds of tasks is to just think about the hunter model, like the model of if you were a hunter in a hunter-gatherer society, there's 3 components that are really important. One is cardio. So that's going to affect your brain chemistry. And from what I've seen over and over again, when you have a consistent, even a short cardio session every day, it can even be 15 minutes, your ability to handle these kinds of tasks definitely goes up. So we'll talk more about that later, but I just want to mention that 2 is the nutrition aspect. If you're feeding your brain with healthy fats and specifically you're getting enough protein and reducing the artificials in your diet, once again, you're going to have more of your brain capacity to handle these kinds of tasks. And then also, if you think about the hunter type model in terms of working in bursts, it's short, intense periods of energy followed by rest. If you think about that as you go through your day, then if you kind of go back to that hunter model of, cardio, protein, work in bursts, you can start to see where that model really becomes helpful in this situation with mundane tasks. So the other point to mention as far as the big challenge with these kinds of tasks is once they become urgent, once they become really stimulating because you've been pushing them out, and now someone's waiting on you, or that there's some major issue is going to occur if you don't get that task done. Magically, it becomes stimulating. And now you can actually have the focus, even though it's connected with a lot of adrenaline and a lot of overwhelm, to get to actually accomplish the task. So this, I'm sure for most of you, is a common thread. It's like you push it out, and then it's like urgent. Now you get it done, and you have the energy to do it, and you have the focus. And maybe that's your pattern. And some people pride themselves on, that's how I work. It's good. It burns out your adrenals, I think, after a while. It's not the ideal way to move through the world as a hunter type. And so I don't know if it's sustainable, but I know for me, for a long time, that was how it worked. But I'm not sure if that's the best way to go. So we're going to talk about other ways to deal with mundane tasks other than waiting to the last minute. So that's sort of the setting the stage of what are these tasks, what constitutes our ability, our inability to work with these kinds of tasks. And they could be anything from financial related tasks, so paying bills, taxes, things like that, to housework and things that need to happen around the house. Maybe they're tasks that your spouse has asked you to do over and over and over again, and you just don't do them. But it causes a rift because you're not able to do them. You're not able to motivate yourself to do them. So they can be work-related tasks. There's things the classic one is just getting back to people, going through your inbox, seeing who you need to return emails to. I work with a lot of sales agents, people that are in sales, and they have this giant, massive inbox where they're really good at going on the hunt and getting the initial hit of getting the client, but then the follow-up and all that kind of the back and forth correspondence after just falls by the wayside. And so that's a common thread in that particular industry. Pick your version of that. It's going to look different for everyone, but each of you, just think about the tasks that you procrastinate. That's what I'm talking about. So that's the terrain we're dealing with. Now let's talk about strategies. The first strategy, and the most important in my opinion, is knowing when to schedule these kinds of tasks. Know your window. Now, for many hunter types, the window for the ability to most handle mundane or overwhelming tasks is usually mid to late morning through 1 or 2 p.m. That tends to be kind of the dopamine cycle where we're up. And if we take good care of ourselves, that's even better. So if we start our day off with some protein, maybe you had some caffeine, so a stimulant can be helpful. It's going to definitely squeeze out that dopamine in the morning. And then you're going to tend to really have an upswing in the morning and then a dip towards the end of the day. So if you're like many of us, then you're probably having some kind of caffeine in the morning. So that's good. And if you then add into that, you had a good protein in the morning. You had 20 to 30 grams of protein in the morning. Maybe it was like a protein shake. That's probably the simplest one. And maybe you got out and did your 15 to 20 minutes of cardio in the morning. That would be ideal. If you can start your day off that way, then you're going to have a really strong window in the mid to late morning through the afternoon you'll be more able to handle these kinds of mundane or overwhelming tasks. And some of them can't be scheduled in that time period, but many of them can. And so that's when you at least want to do your planning. Okay. So if, we'll talk a little bit in a second about breaking tasks down so that they're more clearly defined. And this is a really good time to do that. So maximize that window of time that you're most likely to handle these kinds of tasks so that you're not scheduling them late in the day. Especially late afternoon is often the worst time to schedule like really heady tasks or things that require a lot of thought. Put them towards the morning time, schedule them then, or push them out to the next day if you can. Again, you can't get everything in life down to that perfect scenario, but you'll be surprised how much you can do. Now, for me, I make sure that if I'm handling any financial details or anything that I know that it's going to be a difficult thing for me to do if I'm not really clear, those are scheduled in that period of time. So I don't schedule coaching calls until 10 o'clock in the morning. And so that always gives me some time in the morning to just get myself booted up and be clear. I know that I'll be able to fully be on task during that time. But also anything to do with finances, what are some things that really overwhelm me? I think correspondence is a really big one for me. If someone writes me a long, thoughtful email, I'm not going to be able to respond to that in the late afternoon. To me, that can turn into an overwhelming task of correspondence. That I'd say that's my number one. So I need to be able to do that in that window, or otherwise it gets pushed to the next day. I don't even think to schedule it in the afternoon because otherwise what I'll do is I'll sit down, I'll feel overwhelmed, I won't do it, and then I'll feel bad about it. So there's no point in scheduling it at that time of day. You've got to push it either to the next day during that window and maximize that window of time. I can't stress this enough. If you have your list of things to do, what can you do during that window to really make some progress? And then, later in the day is when more stimulating tasks, that's when the things that come more naturally to you, that's when you want to schedule those, especially those into the evening. And maybe you use that window in the morning to just get clear about the trajectory of the day so that when you come to like 4 o'clock, okay, here's what I'm going to do at this time. Or in the evening, you've already got the map in front of you. Whereas if you wait into the afternoon to do your planning, you're probably going to be challenged by it. So know your window, be clear about when is best to schedule mundane, overwhelming, non-stimulating tasks. And so for me and for many people, it's morning to mid-afternoon, but that might not be the case for you. So just start to pay attention. Think about when you're most on your game and think, okay, this is when I will schedule this task. And I'm not going to push it into a time period when I know I'm more likely to have brain fuzz or more likely to get caught by stimuli. So typically if you'll go up towards, mid to late day, and then you'll start to drop. It's like 4 to 7 p.m. That's when we're typically, not always, tend to be more distractible. We're kind of tired at the end of the day. So that's not the time to schedule these kinds of tasks. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is break it down. Break it down into smaller components. Often we have what appears to be a simple task, and yet we keep pushing it out and pushing it out. And we go like, okay, that's so simple. Why can't I just get myself to do it? If you're finding yourself in that position, it's usually because the task is more complicated than you're giving it credit for, and probably has some key components to it that are overwhelming. And so subconsciously, your subconscious knows this and just pushes it out and says, oh, that's just too much. I know that kind of task. I hate that. Let's just move on. And it might not even be conscious. You might not be thinking through why it is that you're pushing it out. So let's give you an example of a type of task like this and how to break it down and use some tools to make it more manageable. And what I find is when you do that, when you get in the habit of doing this, then you're no longer pushing things out. You're you're switching a light on and saying, wait a minute, I know how to handle this. I'm going to break it down, and here's how I do it. So having a system in place is going to be really helpful. So let's take the task, clean my home office. So clean and organize your home office. Let's take that task. So clean my home office, that's 4 words. Super simple, right? Why can't you just get that done? Well, if you came to me and I was coaching you and I heard that, I would say, whoa. I'd stop you and say, that's too broad. You need to break that down. That's too broad of a task. What's involved in that? So, and this is where the overwhelm comes from, because you don't have a clarity on what needs to happen. And so the clarity, the lack of clarity causes overwhelm, and then you push it out. So let's take a tool like mind mapping, which I love for breaking down tasks. To me, that's like the tool that really changed my life. If we were to map this out, if we were to do a mind map on this, we'd put in the center of the mind map, clean and organize the office. Okay, that's the central topic at the center of the mind map. And then let's take 3 big potential, what are the big 3 categories that would be involved in cleaning the office? So let's pick 3 out of this kind of example. So maybe there's a ton of boxes that are all over the place that have half-filed documents. Maybe they're from even 5 years ago, and they're scattered around the office. So let's say that's one category. So let's make that as one subcategory and call it boxes. Okay, that's one thing we know we got to deal with. And then let's create another branch, and let's say top of the desk. Clearly, that's one that it's messy. There's papers everywhere. And when you go into your home office, instead of being clear about what you need to do, you feel overwhelmed because you know you have to do all this extra work in order to get to a place where you can be productive. So top of the desk, let's call that branch number 2. And let's say the third element of this task of cleaning your home office as you're looking around the room is your shelves are kind of in disarray. There's books kind of tipped over, and it's just not clean and organized. It doesn't feel zen. And so when you see it, you're just like, oh, okay. You step in, then you step back out. You're like, I pass on that. I'll work from somewhere else. These are common examples from other coaching clients that I have, and I also myself. So I'm in this boat as well. So now we have a mind map. At the center of the mind map, we have clean the home office, and then we have 3 main branches: boxes, top of desk, and shelves. So we've taken now this task of clean your office, and we split it out into 3 big categories. Good start. Now let's start to break those down, again, using the mind map. So we know there's boxes of non-filed paperwork, some that are like 5 years old. So let's put on that task. One is assess each box and ask myself 3 questions. 1, is there items in this box that I need to keep in file in my main filing system? Let's say that's one example. 2 is what can be thrown away. And 3 is, can I just move that box into storage? Okay, so now you've given yourself a directive. If you're working on boxes, now you've got 3 things that you know you need to do in order to assess that box. Way easier. Now you can go, okay, here's box 1. Let's look at it. I've got my checklist now. Let's go through the checklist and see what I need to do. And at the end of it, you're either throwing stuff away, you're filing it, and at the end of that, you're going to put the box in storage. And hopefully you have nothing left, and then you can just put the box away. So boxes, you fleshed that out. Just took a couple minutes and you're clear now. Here's my directive when I'm handling a box. This is what I need to do. So let's move on to the second branch, which is top of the desk. So tons of paperwork there. Filing the paperwork is clearly going to be one of the components to it. So that's going to be task number 1. 2 is throwing anything away that needs to be thrown away. Maybe there's, or put away. Maybe there's cups and things that you need to put in the sink or whatever, depending on the level of catastrophe that is your home office. So, that's number 2. And 3 is just organize. So anything that needs to be moved to the desk to make your work life more wonderful. What else needs to happen in order to really straighten out and make your top of the desk really nice. Maybe you have a place for your planner, and maybe putting your planner there in the morning is going to remind you to get up and go and do your planning in the home office. That's one way to think about it. So make your list for that. Go through your checklist. What are the things what am I going to do on the top of the desk to take that and make it into something that's zen, so at the end of it you feel like, okay, that task was handled. And then 3, let's say the shelving is kind of in disarray. Well, this might be the easiest one. So we might put that last because last or first. Maybe you put it first in the list because you want to make some progress, and that's cool too. Do whatever that might be. It's good to feel like you're making progress. But so for the shelves, it's just straightening. Maybe it's not that bad. It's just, arranging some books, moving things around. Maybe there's a couple items that need to be moved. Give yourself your list for that branch. So now we have boxes, top of the desk, shelves. We have a clear action item list for each of those subcomponents. Then you prioritize, and this may only take a second. You might say, okay, well, actually, the top of the desk is the primary piece because I need to get work done. So let's call that number 1, and let's make that the priority because it's affecting my ability to work. And maybe there's some key pieces of paper on there. Maybe there's bills that need to get paid. Those need to be sorted out. And maybe you go, okay, well, boxes is second, and then shelving is third. Okay, so awesome. Now you've got your map. You've got 3 sets of action item lists that you can go through and split this up potentially into sessions. So we have session number 1, maybe I only got an hour today to work on this. So let's start with the top of the desk. And now you've got your task list. You're clear now what you need to do, and you're just going to tackle that. And you tell yourself, that's it. If I handle the top of the desk, I'm done for the day. Great. Then maybe you say tomorrow, no, that's not going to work tomorrow. Maybe the weekend. Okay, I can schedule maybe a half-hour session on the weekend to handle this again. You get out your phone, you make a reminder to yourself for Saturday morning at like 10 a.m. 10 to 10:30, you got a window. And so now we know if the top of the desk was today, then that's going to be the boxes. You're going to handle the boxes in that session. And then at the end of that session, you may say, okay, well, let's schedule the next one. And and you probably can get the boxes and the shelves done in the same session. So that's 2 sessions and you're done. So as you can hear from that example, this all sounds blaringly simple, but for hunter types, we forget to do it. So pick your task. You can go through that same basic planning method and do your mind map and extract from that a clear action item list and see if you can split it out into sessions if it's too big of a task for you to handle in one session. So once again, to start with, what is the task that's getting pushed off? 2 is ideally do a mind map, put the task at the center of the mind map, and then split it out into its main components, and then drill down your action item list per component. And then you can take it and split it up into multiple sessions if you need to, with a reminder to yourself on your calendar so you can come back to it. So that's breaking it down in the way that I find is most helpful. So try that one out. That's tip number 2, break it down. Okay, tip number 3 is schedule it with another person. Schedule the task with another person. So my rule of thumb is if it's on my schedule for a few days and I don't get to it and I keep pushing it out, then I have to schedule it with someone else in some way. So it's so important. It's such a key skill for hunter types to get good at. Some of the most effective hunter types in the world, they are effective and they're successful because they got good at asking for support. Key person, Richard Branson, has come out and said he is definitely ADHD. He's also dyslexic. And if you watch any documentaries on him, you'll see that he, from an early age, specifically with the dyslexia, had to get good at asking for support and delegating tasks to get through school. I'm sure there were some sketchy ways that he went about doing that as well. But regardless, he had to learn at an early age that he needed to delegate. And he said that was one of his key superpowers, was learning to delegate. So that absolutely is one of the key tasks for us hunter types, is to get good at how do we schedule this with another person. So avoid leaning just on your own willpower, know your limitations, and call in support. And you can do it in a very stealthy way where it doesn't feel like you're like, oh, poor me, I can't handle this. You ignore that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about calling someone in, asking for their feedback. For example, if you have a task where, this is a great example. If your house is continually messy, and specifically you're sitting in your house going, oh, it's a mess, call someone up, schedule to have them come over in like 2 days. Someone you know you have to clean the house for in order for you to get the motivation to do it. And that will be a key. So it's not direct, right? You're just inviting them over. They have no idea you have an ulterior motive. Have them come over, schedule it for 2 days. It will force you, it will give you the stimuli to get your house cleaned up. So that's one example of doing it. Another could be with exercise. Maybe you want to do what we talk about, which is like the 15 minutes of cardio every day, but you just can't get yourself to do it. Schedule it with someone else. Find an exercise buddy. There's people around you that will exercise with you. I guarantee it. So that's just another easy example of ways that you can schedule something with another person. I have a no homework rule, and you've probably heard me talk about this. If someone asks me to, say, write a recommendation for them, I immediately say, great, let's schedule a phone call together and go through it. I do not take, if at all possible, I do not take on homework. I ask people to come in and do it with me. And so there's no sense of like, oh, Michael, he can't do this. It has what he's scheduling with me. It's always just, it's a very respectful conversation where people just go, oh, okay, that's how he does it. No problem. So there's ways that you can schedule tasks with another person in a way that gives you self-esteem and doesn't, get you to shrink and think, oh, poor me, I can't handle this on my own. So another example is like tax times. Taxes are like a pain. You're always late on them because you just can't motivate yourself to do it. Other people are in the same boat. Schedule a call with a friend and say, hey, it's tax time's coming up. I just can't get myself motivated to do it sometimes. Let's just get on the phone together. You do yours, I'll do mine. And we'll just hang out on the phone together and talk while we're doing this. There's 1,000 things you can do with that general thought in mind of scheduling it with another person. Like for me, with Questa, my partner, if I have something that comes up where I'm like, whoa, it's just too overwhelming, I'll just call her in and say, I need to talk through this. Can you just give me a couple minutes of your time and all? And I usually I typically am clear about what the request is. Which is part of the deal. If you get good at asking for what you need clearly, so that you're not frustrated at the end because the person did not read your mind and know what you were needing in that moment. So if you need someone to just be quiet and listen while you talk something through for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, ask that going into it instead of assuming that they'll know how to support you on it. So tip number 3, schedule a task with another person. Schedule it with another person if you find your own willpower is just not enough to motivate yourself to do the task. Okay, tip number 4 is do not overschedule. So set yourself up for a win. So this is a classic hunter type mistake, and you want to avoid it, which is so for us hunter types, we tend to get into this flooding thing where everything and all these urgent and non-urgent tasks all flood together and we just can't think straight. And so we feel like, okay, the only way to get out of that state of overwhelm is just by putting all of those tasks on the list for that day. And then you're just setting yourself up. Like you're not going to get all that stuff done. It's impossible. No one can do it. You're not going to, and then you're just feeding your inner critic ammo to shoot at you later. It's like you're just feeding it to beat yourself up later with. So don't do that. Become clear about what you can accomplish in that particular day. And don't overschedule it. And we'll go into like the next tip in a second because it's going to be the key to flipping this over. But get your subconscious on your side, meaning that if you only schedule a small set of items for a particular day and you set yourself up for a win, then you're going to feel good that you accomplished those things, so that your subconscious is like, okay, we're getting stuff done now. We're moving forward. This is good. But if you have 10 things on your list and you do 2 of them, then you have like, oh, I did 2, but then I didn't do all this other 8. Well, duh. If you had set yourself up for 2, you would have had a win. And then the next day you would have had a greater sense of self-esteem. You would have had some motivation. So get clear about what you can do in a day, and even half it, like whatever your estimation is for hunter types, like even go below that and set yourself up for a win, so that the next day you can come in. And that's not a knock at our ability to do things. That is how our brain tends to work. We tend to be very creative, and we can often say, okay, well, the other end of this is I can handle this, this, and this. It's like overconfidence. And that is also a recipe for failure. So set yourself up for a win. Do not overschedule. So connected in with this is the next tip, which is pick one mundane or overwhelming task per day. That's it. So keep that as a goal to yourself. If you have your list of things that you know you need to do that have been being pushed out, pick one of those per day. So when you do this, it becomes a habit for you. Maybe in the short term, it feels like everything's taking longer, but in the long run, this is going to be the strategy that's going to really make your life flow smoothly, which is you can keep a running list of the mundane, overwhelming tasks and just pick one for that day and dial it in. And then look at that task and go filter it through what I said before. Can I break this down further? Yes. Okay. Sit down and do a mind map, get clear, and say, okay, wait a minute. That mundane task is like a 3-dayer. That's like 3 sessions. Maybe there's 3 half-hour sessions to get that one done. Cool. Then that becomes the first session is what you do today. So pick one mundane or overwhelming task per day. And so this is how you ensure that you're going to have a sense of moving forward. You're setting yourself up for a win, as well as it's keeping you from getting into that crippling overwhelm where you've got too many things going and you're not making progress on any of them. If you do this and you get in the habit of doing it for 1 week, you'll start to notice, wow, your life starts, maybe in the first couple of days, you're just like, oh, but I got to get this done and then I got to get that one done. But if you stay to that system where you just pick one per day and you just like, whatever's going to happen, I'm going to get that one thing done that day, you're going to start to feel over the span of a couple of weeks, things start to shift. You start to feel like, okay, now I've got my system in place. I'm picking one per day. And then I just go through the rest of my day. I'm just going to ignore the other things. And ideally in the morning, when you sit down and you do your planning session, you can prioritize what that mundane task is. What's the thing that's most important for you to handle that day that's overwhelming, as well as breaking it down if you need to. So again, that mundane task may be and often is something that gets split out through multiple sessions. So if you're confused, then do the mind map. Just default to, I'm not sure what to do in the situation, then start to break it down until you get to a place where you have a clarity of what that task looks like. Okay, so the next tip is something we alluded to earlier, but I want to revisit it, which is do not underestimate the power of a good health routine to positively affect your ability to handle mundane and overwhelming tasks. I can't stress this enough. Cardio, 15 minutes a day or 2 to 3 sessions a week at a half an hour is going to help you do these tasks and handle them more than if you did not do that. Second to that is make sure you're getting enough protein, especially in the morning when you first kick your day off. Those 2 things can make a huge difference in your ability to do all the things that I'm talking about. So the ideal morning schedule would be you start your day with 20 to 30 grams of protein. A protein shake is the simplest way to do that. Get some frozen berries, get a protein powder, put some orange juice or whatever into it, blend it up, drink it, go for a jog for 15 minutes, come back, And then I can guarantee you will be more able to do your planning and be able to figure out what you need to do for that day. So I just can't stress enough. That's what's worked for me. I watched it work for other clients and with coaching clients. So I at least try it. Just like if you hear me talk about this and you're like, oh yeah, but you're not doing it, go do it, test it out for a week, and then come back to me. And if you say, oh, I did all these things and I can't do these tasks as I'm mapping out, let me know, because you are very much the anomaly in the scenario, because most of the time when you get into these kinds of good health routines, your ability to go through and do these, it may not be comfortable. You may not get to the point where you just love to sit down and do your taxes. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just the ability to manage it, where you can sit down and have the mental clarity to know you're going to be able to handle it. And then you default to those other tips that I talk about. Okay, this is just too much. I need to schedule it with another person. But having the ability to schedule and plan at the beginning of your day is going to make a big difference when it comes to these overwhelming, mundane tasks. And so the next tip, which is connected to planning, is practice remaking your action item lists throughout the day. So this is somewhat counterintuitive, and most people don't think to do this. But what I find for 100 types is this one strategy can be super effective. So get in the habit of, like, if you get confused or you're going into a different part of the day, sit down, even though you've done your planning in the morning, just off the top of your head, open up your planner, open up your, just like I carry around with me a Strathmore sketchbook. So I think it's 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. It's small, it's portable. I got a pencil in it. And I like the spiral bound because I can open it up and it's just blank paper. That's all it is. It's just a sketchbook. And I will just write, if it's the beginning of the day, I'll write the date. Otherwise, I'll just draw a horizontal line and I'll just write out, okay, what is it that I need to do next? And I'll just write that list out again. It kind of reboots your brain and goes, okay, wait, what am I doing? Here's what I'm doing. I need to write this out again. There's a difference between doing that versus looking at a list you've already created. What I find is this little trick. I know what I want to do. I know in general what it is. So when I sit down and do that again, it just kind of reboots my brain. And I think, okay, well, actually, yeah, I need to do that, and that. And I might have that same thing written right above it, but just the act of writing it out gets me clear again. And then it gets me moving forward. So this process also really comes into play if you think about splitting up your day into sessions. Maybe it's 1 hour sessions. If you do the Pomodoro technique, it's 25-minute sprints. That works for some people. For other people, that's too short of a time period. Don't box yourself in. But if you think in terms of general sessions for yourself, no more than an hour a piece, then maybe at the beginning of the day, you schedule, okay, at 2 p.m., I'm going to go for a jog. Okay, so that 2 p.m. comes around, you do that. But if it's something where it's an action item or it's a task, so maybe at 11:30 or 12 o'clock, you have to do some correspondence. Maybe you scheduled from 12 to 12:30 correspondence. And that was it. You didn't go into any specifics on it. So now that time period comes up. You even have a reminder on your phone. Now you sit down with your planner or with your computer or whatever, and you take 2 minutes and you say, what is it that I need to do in this next, whatever you've scheduled for yourself? Maybe it's like an hour or half an hour. Write out what are the tasks that you know you need to do. So if it's correspondence, then go through and write out who are the people I need to get back to. You write out that list. It should take you just a couple seconds. And then look at the list for a second and say, who's most important to get back to? Highlight that person and go, okay, I got to get back to that person today. Okay, that maybe took 3 minutes. And then the rest, now you know, you've got far more clarity. You're not just sitting there going, oh, okay, just sifting through your emails. And if you have a trajectory going into, especially something that's potentially overwhelming, you're going to be more likely to stay focused on it. And that, I think emails is a good example, because if you just wrote to yourself, get back to, just put correspondence, and you never break it down beyond that, as we stated earlier, that's probably going to just turn into overwhelm. Oh God, I got to get that. You start looking at your list and you go, oh, I forgot to get back to that person. Oh, and then it just turns into an overwhelm fest where you don't get anything done. Whereas if you had sat down before you did your correspondence and you wrote out off the top of your head the people you knew you need to get back to and you prioritized, then you can have a little bit of energy towards, okay, wait, I'm not going to get lost in this. I'm not going to ignore other things, and I'm just going to get back to those people. And then maybe at the end of that session, you then sift through some people you know you also need to get back to or look through your list, and then maybe make a list for yourself for the next day. So practice remaking your action item list throughout the day or refining the list so that you can kind of boot your brain back up again and get yourself into the clarity of what are you directing yourself to do during that time period. If it's too vague, it's just like if you were trying to communicate to another person and you'd say, okay, I need you to do some correspondence today, and you never give them any further clarity, they come back to you and say, oh, well, I kind of did this and this. And then you get mad at them because they didn't do the thing you expected. We do that to ourselves. It's stupid. Why would we wouldn't do that to another person, but we often do it to ourselves as hunter types. So if you get good at practicing remaking your lists, giving yourself clear directives over the next time period. So whatever it is that maybe it's an hour and a half, say that I'm sitting down, I'm going to do this. And you've made a clear directive to yourself, then you're going to you'll accomplish the thing you need to accomplish, and you'll feel like you came away with a win versus just another pile of stuff that you didn't do. So practice remaking lists, key tip for hunter types. Okay, and our final tip on mastering mundane, overwhelming, non-stimulating tasks is be gentle on yourself, okay? In Tom Hartman's words, we're hunters living in a world that was primarily created by farmer types. So don't gauge your self-worth based on your ability to do these kinds of tasks. They're challenging for most of us. So know that you're not the only one. Have empathy for yourself and ensure that there are items on your daily schedule that bring you joy and self-confidence, that lean on your positive tendencies as a hunter type. Get good at celebrating your wins. So when you do accomplish these kinds of tasks that feel so like, oh, God, what? Of course I cleaned the house. What a stupid task. I should just be able to do that. That's typically the dialogue. Instead of saying that, say, I did it. I know for me, these are really challenging tasks, and I did it. I accomplished this. I may not have gotten everything done today, but I got that done. This is the kind of thing that you want to have in your thought stream consciously throughout the day. And if you practice doing that, you'll find you have much more motivation to then go through and tackle these kinds of tasks because you're not continually judging yourself for your inability to do them. Celebrate the small wins and recognize at the end of your life, most of these little mundane tasks won't make any difference. That it's not the thing that you're going to be thinking about at the end of your life. You're going to be celebrating your connections with people, what you brought into the world, how you expressed yourself. Those are the kinds of things that will matter the most. So put the mundane tasks, the overwhelming tasks in their proper perspective, and know that they're just things that you need to do in order to survive in our society, in this particular modern society, which is not the most perfect society in the world. Because if it were, there wouldn't be so many challenges with depression and suicide. These kinds of events don't necessarily happen in hunter-gatherer cultures. They don't, if they're living traditionally, the suicide rate, the depression rate is almost non-existent. So we are living in somewhat of a disconnected society. It's a society that most of us did not create, obviously. We didn't put our energy into saying this is how we want it to go. Had we had more of an input as hunter types, it would be a totally different world. but it needs all of us. Like there's farmer types, there's hunter types, and we together create society. But we have to recognize as hunter types that there are strong suits that we can bring to the table that farmer types do not have. And so we need to maximize our life and maximize the trajectory of our life so that we can find those gifts, utilize them, and bring them out into the world instead of just becoming another farmer type. And unfortunately, that's often the message that we get when they talk about ADD and ADHD. You got to fit in, you got to find, your way to just do these things. But that's discounting the unique gifts that we have as human beings and as hunter types. So my suggestion is put these tasks in their proper perspective. Learn to accept yourself, celebrate your wins, and then utilize the tools that we talked about today to maximize your ability to handle these kinds of tasks. So I hope that was helpful to you. As a reminder, the book, The Drummer in the Great Mountain, is on sale for 15% off on our website through July 4th. Just go to drummerinthegreatmountain.com and click on the purchase link. Also, if you haven't already, pick up the new free ebook, ADHD Time Management. You can get it on Kindle, iBooks, Google Play, Kobo. The links are in the description of this episode. Reviews are really helpful. If you're enjoying this podcast, consider writing a review on iTunes or whatever service you get this podcast from. If you've purchased the book and it's been helpful to you, consider writing a review on Amazon. We just added it a couple months ago, and I know you guys have been buying the book through the website for a long time, so consider going over there, writing a review. That's super helpful to us. Join us on social media. That's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Just go to drummerinthegreatmountain.com and click on the links at the top. If you're new to this podcast, we've recently created a free 5-day mini course. You'll be emailed an episode each day for 5 days, so it's an audio course. This can be a really helpful introduction to this work. I decided that we needed a little bit of a quick get up to speed mini course for people new to the podcast, new to this material. I think that could be really helpful to you. If you're interested, go to drummerinthegreatmountain.com/mini course. That's MINICOURSE mini course. If you already have the book, the first 20 or so episodes of this podcast are the audio companion to the book. Be sure to check that out, and you can read through the book chapter by chapter and go along with those podcasts. I think that will add an extra dimension to going through this work. And that's it. So until next time, be well.